Hey everybody, today I'm going to be using the Arrtx acrylic markers to show you some sketchbook ideas. You can see here that I have the 36 color set and it comes with these stickers that I honestly didn't really know what to do with. Because they are stickers, I thought I'd put them onto my markers, but they didn't really match the colors and they were a bit flimsy, so I didn't put them on all of the markers. And I was actually surprised. You can see here that the markers actually matched the caps somewhat well. I've tried the colored pencils from Arrtx in the past and I really like them, but they do not match what they look like at all. The colors look completely differently on the pen than they are when you use them. But with these markers, I was actually surprised they matched really well. And I really liked this color selection. At first, I was worried that the 36 colors wouldn't be a lot with markers because you kind of need a lot of colors to get where you want to go. But I really like the colors that are in this set. And by the way, they did send me the colors, but this video is not sponsored. I actually wanted to try them for a while because so many people kept using them, probably because they sent these out to all of the art YouTubers. That's usually what happens, and then everyone talks about them. And I was a bit reluctant to use them at first, just because when something's so overhyped, usually then I don't really like it. But because I had already used the colored pencils, I told them to send me the markers to try as well. And I have to say that I was pretty happy with them. They are a lot more affordable than the pigment or the deco markers from Acrylic Markers. But I was comparing them to those because those are the most similar ones that I've used before. I've also used Posca pens and Molotov markers in the past, but I didn't really use the brush tip ones. I know that Posca actually has some that have brush tips, but I had a few years ago and I wasn't really happy with them. In general, Posca markers are a bit splotchy, so I haven't used them that much in the past. And I've used a few other acrylic marker brands in the past, but usually the color selection is what stops me from using them a lot. But here are a lot of more muted colors that aren't extremely vibrant, which is something that I personally really like. Often with these markers, they're just extremely bold. So I feel like this set is actually a good addition to the more bold colors that I already have. And you can see, started with this cartoony kind of looking drawing here. We have a cat in a plant pot, and the pot is a bit upset about the cat squishing all of the leaves to the side, and I thought that that was a fun idea. I had a sketch in my sort of ugly off-camera sketchbook about this already, and I knew I wanted to use it for an illustration at some point, and I thought that this would be really fun, especially since last time I used the Acrylic markers, I also did something with cats, so I felt like this would be a nice thing to compare them to. And I have to say that these aren't as high quality, obviously, as the Acrylic ones, because these are, I think, less than half the price, or even less than that. They're a lot more affordable, but obviously that depends on where you live and where you can order these from, and maybe you also have coupons or something. There's a lot of factors that go into pricing, so it's always a bit hard for me, especially when I'm in Europe and a lot of my audience is all around the world. A lot of them are in the US. It's a bit hard for me to compare prices because Acrylic markers are here from Europe. They come from Poland, I believe. And these Arrtx markers, I believe, come from China. So prices are always vary a little bit, but these are a lot more affordable is what I'm trying to say. You can see that I also used colored pencils, but sparingly. I think I only used the purple one and then later on a green one. And I used a white Prismacolor colored pencil as well, just to blend a little bit, just because I had it right next to me and thought, why not use it? And sometimes these markers are really juicy and sometimes they're a little bit more on the drier side, which is definitely something that I've found with all of the acrylic brush markers that I've used. There's something about the ink struggling to flow through this kind of nib. And something that I've also noticed is that these damage the paper more than the Karen markers. I used the Karen markers with the individual bristles last, and I was really surprised that they didn't damage the paper whatsoever, which is really rare for acrylic markers. But these don't damage it that much. The Arrtx ones, the Poscup markers and Molotov markers are the ones that really damage the paper, the ones with the hard tips. These are the ones that I would say are more suitable for crafting and drawing on something that is not paper. Also the ones from Stettler and Marabu. I've used a few brands of acrylic markers or these opaque markers. I don't know if the liquid inside it is actually acrylic paint. These ones feel sort of more like gouache, to be honest. They dry really matte, which is something that I personally really like. I like the look of it. And here I was just really playing around with a few of the colors. I really liked the selection of the green tones. And I also like that the cat sort of reminds me a little bit of coffee. And by the way, I am using a toned sketchbook here. It is a slightly gray tone. It's a light gray, but that's the reason why you can see the white against the paper as well. And I've really been enjoying this sketchbook, and I think I'm getting pretty close to finishing it. And I'm actually a bit sad about that because it's been so fun and I might get another one of these. This one is from Hanemühle, and it is not like a super fancy watercolor paper like the 100% cotton one that Hanemühle also has, but it works really well for gouache and acrylic markers and also the more water-based watercolor markers. All of these are really fun to use in this sketchbook, and so I had a lot of fun with this. Here I was also trying to do a bit of gradients. Gradients were something that I found a little bit hard with these because they are really, really opaque and they dry quickly. So gradients are something that is rather hard with these. And I was actually surprised about that because I have seen a few videos about these and people keep on talking about how easy it is to blend them. And I didn't find that to be the case, honestly. But I found out on this page spread, by the way, here I was using a website that shows you a random Google Street View. And I used that as inspiration for two landscapes here. And in the one on the right, actually, I think was the one where I realized I could use the blender marker from Karen Markers. And that's the one that actually comes with the watercolor markers that they have. I can use that to blend these as well. In my last video about the Karen Markers, I used the blender marker for the pigment markers, so it's actually from another set, but it worked really well. And so here I thought, why not try it with these two? And it worked really well. So if you have a water-based blender marker, and I don't think it matters if it's made for acrylic markers or which brand it is, I encourage you to try it because it worked really well. I mean, the thing is that you obviously have to use it before the ink fully dries because otherwise it doesn't work anymore. But it worked really well. And here on this page that I'm currently doing, I wanted to really stylize the landscape that I had gotten. And on the website, it shows you a very random Google Street View. And this was the second one that it showed me. The first one was literally just a field with some trees. There was nothing there. So I allowed myself to skip that one and then used the second one because this one I thought was interesting enough. And the thing with the Google Street View is that it shows you photos that aren't perfectly curated. So it shows you all different kinds of things. And this one was actually really nice comparatively. It almost looked like it was a curated photo, but not fully. These are not really edited, obviously. And these are also not, the composition isn't completely thought through. And you can also scroll around a bit, so you can move the camera a little bit and adjust the angle. And I really challenged myself here to stylize what I saw. And I also didn't want to use too many colors and too many gradients. I wanted to lean into this more blocky style that works with markers. So that's kind of what I was trying here, and I had a lot of fun with this. I think this is actually a really challenging exercise, especially if you're more of a beginner artist. Stylizing things is really hard, and just copying something is a lot easier than thinking about how you can simplify and stylize things. So this could be a challenge or an exercise for you if you want to improve your own skills of stylizing something, especially with the Google Street View pictures, because they're not as perfect. I didn't really feel the pressure of doing the picture justice in any way. If I have a really good reference picture, I mean, that's amazing too, and sometimes that really helps me. But sometimes you feel the pressure of having to use the picture in the best way and doing it justice and recreating it really well. And that can kind of hinder the ability to create your own style and change things and allow yourself to be a bit more loose. So with these, I found that that was actually a bit easier because I didn't feel that pressure, and there were things about these pictures that weren't perfect. So I allowed myself to be more on the loose side of my interpretation here. And by the way, I know that these are really sped up and really fast because we're trying to get through a lot of these in a very short time. But if you want to learn how to curate your own pictures and how to get better and want a more step-by-step approach, then I highly recommend checking out my online art membership, the Cozy Creators Collective. There is a free 7-day trial, and it gives you immediate access to all past classes, and then obviously access to the class that is in the week that you join in. And I really recommend checking it out, and you can just go in there on the free trial and confirm that the membership is the right fit for you. And obviously I'm really happy about everybody who then decides to join more long term. I will leave the link for it in the description box below, and also to my courses if you want to learn something specifically. And also let me know what's something that you would like to learn and improve in the future, because I'm always taking note of all of the requests and all of the stuff that people actually want to learn. Every single course that I've made is in response to something that people told me that they wanted to learn and something that where they wanted to improve. And the same with all of the classes and the sessions in the membership. All of the themes in and there are some that people actually told me that they want to learn. So I am trying to make the most useful content and solve as many issues that people might be facing in their journey as possible. So you can see with this picture that I was sort of limiting my colors here as well. And I was mainly using the blue tones and just a few of those, actually, not all of them. I was really leaning into the blue and the green tones that are more muted and not as vibrant in this set. I was really drawn to those. And I think that's one of the reasons why I really enjoyed creating these pieces, because I really like these colors. The one thing that I noticed with the markers is that the small details are actually a bit hard to do. So here I was introducing a colored pencil again to just do a few outlines and just get in a few more details. I like to use my colored pencils for these things anyways when I use watercolors or other media, not really with gouache, but with markers, I often introduce colored pencils at some point. And I think that these will maybe work really well in addition to my Karen markers, because the Karen markers, the newer ones that I've tried, the pigment real brush ones, have a really thin point and are really, really nice for small details. And these have a bit of a thicker nib, and I think they're a bit better for the somewhat larger shapes that I draw. So maybe using both of these would be an idea for the future. If you have multiple types of acrylic markers, or even multiple types of markers in general, I really recommend trying to mix them. And even if you have watercolor markers and acrylic markers, that's something that I mixed in my last video and it worked really well. So I encourage you to try some mixed media also with colored pencils. You might get really fun results if you try multiple things and combine them in one piece, because then you're not just limited to one type of supply. So on the right side here, I was doing the same thing and I just clicked on next once, and that was the next one that came up. And the one on the left was in Norway, I believe, and now we're in Brazil. And I got these obviously this looks completely different. Now we have palm trees and it looks like this is a way different climate now, and we have these houses that look a bit more, they look unfinished but also a bit run down. This one was the better looking one. I turned around, and then on the other side there is one that looks a lot more run down. And I was debating on doing that actually, because it would have been really interesting for a stylized piece. I think that all of these details are really fun. And I was also trying here to not romanticize this too much, but it is still a simplified illustration and I tried to not overdo it too much. So there was kind of a balance that I was trying to find here. And yeah, like I said, with the Google Street View, it allows you to think about these things and really take that into consideration. So I think I'm going to do that again, actually. It is a really hard challenge, I have to say, but I think I'm learning a lot from this. It's almost like you're outside and doing plein air. Obviously, it's still a two-dimensional photo, so it's not exactly the same, but it is a little bit more like that because it's not as curated. And with this one, I was also using the same green tones again so that my pages would fit together. And also on the left one, I did leave some of the gray of my paper in the sky because the sky was actually gray. And so I thought, why not leave some of the paper still visible? But here on the right side, I covered it all up. I left a little bit of the gray actually in the clouds. I I only did a bit of white in the clouds. I find it really fun when I have a colored paper like this to leave a bit of the gray still visible, because you can get these effects where you can see the white in front of the paper. I almost wish that the paper in these circumstances was a little bit darker, so it would be even more noticeable. But then in other circumstances, when I'm using watercolors, I'm actually happy that it's not too dark, because then it wouldn't be as vibrant anymore. So I don't know which way to go there, honestly, but I think that toned sketchbooks are really fun to experiment with and just get some new effects, and just think about your art a little bit differently, because we're so used to doing art on white paper. And actually in my membership for this week's class, I want to talk about underpaintings, so doing the first layer with a specific color and then painting over top of that, because if you paint on a different color than white, it's gonna give you different results, and it's really fun to experiment with that, because you can just achieve a lot different color variation with that. So that's also gonna be in my membership if you're interested. And here I believe, yeah, this was when I realized that I can use the Blender pen marker. I don't know if these are available open stock. I'm gonna have to check that out, because just getting this one blender would be really handy. I also don't know if that ruins the blender. It might very well ruin the blender after a while if you use it a lot with this, but these are so juicy. The Karen watercolor markers are really juicy, so I wasn't too worried about that. And I think you can change the nibs if I'm not mistaken. I think they might be available open stock. I'm gonna have to look at that. So here with the clouds, you can see that I used the white a little bit. I was actually a bit surprised, because the white was the one color that wasn't as opaque as the others. I don't understand, because every other color was really opaque, and then the white kind of let me down a little bit. And it's not the only brand that happens with Stettler ones, where I also really liked them, but the white was the one color that wasn't as opaque. I don't know, maybe it's really hard to make an opaque white color. At the top of my head, I can't remember if the Karen markers, the white is really opaque, but I don't think I noticed anything, so it probably was really nice. So I don't know why this is the case. But yeah, that's just something that I noticed. Some markers might just take several layers for them to look really nice. And also you can see, if you look on the piece on the left, for example, with the dark green, you can see that it's a bit streaky in some areas. And I just didn't want to do another layer. I couldn't be bothered. I didn't want to worry about this. I was just playing around in my sketchbook, and I encourage you in your sketchbook to just play around as well. If it's a finished piece that you want to hang on the wall, I would take more time with it and do more layers, but especially with these pages here where I was challenging myself to stylize pieces, I didn't want to be too rigid and too perfectionistic, and I just wanted to see where it goes basically and practice and improve a little bit. So that's sort of the approach that I had here. And I think the pathway, the street here, is probably my least favorite part of the piece. I didn't really know how to stylize this, because it wasn't really as nice of a path in the reference, and there was a lot going on. There was a lot of stuff just lying around that I didn't really want to draw, because it would have been just a little bit too much to add, and I wanted to simplify it a bit. So I think that's the part that isn't as successful. And if I did this piece again, I would probably not look at the reference picture, but I would look at my own piece and then stylize that piece even further. So if you're in a sketchbook and you want to improve, sometimes it can be really useful to do your pieces again and improve the parts that you weren't as happy with, and then you can learn a lot from that. And it's something that I don't do that often because it gets a bit repetitive with making videos, but it is something that I do in my off-camera sketchbook when I want to practice and improve. And I create something that I think is really cute, but then there's one thing that I don't like about it, then I will do the same thing again, minus the thing that I didn't like. So maybe that's something that can help you to know that it's a really useful tool to recreate your own art and just make it better, because you often know the stuff that isn't as successful in your pieces. But yeah, overall, I am quite happy with this page spread, even though it's not the perfect thing, but it was a bit of a challenge to do, honestly. So I am glad that I tried that. And also with the other page spread with the cat, I am really happy with how that turned out. And like I said, if you want to learn alongside me in a much slower format, then check out the membership, because all of the stuff in there is real time, so you can really see how quickly or slowly I work and go along. And there's live sessions every other week, and then pre-recorded classes on the alternating weeks, and obviously a catalog of all of the stuff that has been done previously. So here is this page spread finished. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did so, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And until next time, goodbye!